find out Wes is heading to a nearby starbase to get testing, because everyone knows how much we give a damn about him. However, it turns out he won't be alone, as Dr. Pulaski tells Picard he needs some surgery done. And if he won't do it here, he's going to have to go to the starbase too. Tough call for Picard. 12 hours round trip in a shuttle alone with Wesley, or being operated on by the Gorgon. He decides to go with Wesley, though clearly unhappy. The look he gives Geordi on the way out is one you normally see someone give to finding a dog turd under their shoe. You can see Picard's appreciation, since instead of the normal shuttle, he picks one that's the size of a U-Haul, presumably to allow as much room to get away from Wesley as possible. Meanwhile, on their way to look at some really nifty pulsars to get a distress signal from the Packwood's. Turns out their ship doesn't work and they needed to go. And that was a more intelligent version of what they actually asked for.
But you sent out a mayday?
Uh-huh.
Do you need help?
We are Packwood's. Our ship is the Mondor. It is broken.
Apparently, we found the space short bus. After several minutes of conversation like that, Geordi says he can go over and fix it in no time. But Worf is leery about that, suspicious of these guys. Riker, however, sees nothing at all suspicious about people too stupid to operate their own ship, and sends Geordi over alone to deal with them. Geordi arrives and they all close in to give him big hugs, but he manages to get out of it in time, and says he's going to get to work fixing the ship.
He is smart.
Meanwhile, Picard is trapped with Wesley. When Wesley comments on the slow speed, Picard contemptuously compares it with the late 22nd century. In other words, when he thinks of something slow and monotonous, his first thought is Captain Jonathan Archer. You and me both, Picard. He also shows that genuine love he has for Wesley.
Why are you coming with me to Starbase 515, sir?
Well, it's certainly not my idea.
6 hours alone with a little turd like you makes me vomit. Picard eventually reveals that he's going to replace his artificial heart, because his current one is faulty. Still, faulty or no, he's too prideful to want people looking at his insides. He'd rather risk death. So he tries going back to his book, but eventually Wesley strikes up a conversation again. Picard replies by closing the book and, heads back into the shuttle, far, far away from Wesley.
Didn't you ever wish you had kids of your own?
Wishing for a thing does not make it so.
Saying make it so is how you make it so. Little turd. Dear God, I hate you so. Back on Enterprise, Troy comes running on the bridge, convinced Geordi's in great danger, which you'll know because she says it like 5 times in a row. Geordi seems alright as he continues with the repairs, but other stuff keeps breaking and he goes from task to task. Finally, Riker says he's going to just tow them to a starbase to get straightened out, but instead they steal Geordi's phaser and set it to ass kick and blast him. They then raise some pretty advanced shields to block the transport and cut off communication. Now, you might be thinking this was all a clever ruse, and if so, you'd be partially correct. There was a ruse, but not that the Packwood's were faking, just as the damage itself was fake. They really, truly are that dumb. Now, people have tried to defend them, saying that they were just linguistically hampered, but these people show no sign that they have any kind of intelligence. They're going to be tricked by a trap more obvious than their own eventually, and never see it coming. So I'm not buying into that. They have no language skills, no technical skills, an inability to see through a transparent deception. Well, what kind of intelligence do these numbnuts have, then, that's worth talking about? Do they have a firm grasp of baseball? Are they musical savants? Everything suggests these people are as stupid as they seem. And that's what's sad. Getting tricked by a less advanced species. Okay, that would make a fine episode. But there's a colossal difference between a group of less advanced aliens and a ship that's literally full of morons. I've often said that a Star Trek villain is obviously retarded, but I never actually meant it literally before. The Enterprise has just been tricked by a ship full of retards. And just compare this with our previous episode, Q-Who, where the enemy was the Borg. That just highlights the difference between a good villain and a bad villain. Generally speaking, good villains are threatening, powerful, and, capable of forming a goddamn sentence! When I think of a nemesis for the Enterprise, of the best that Starfleet has to offer, my mind turns to relentless cyborgs, not the Special Olympics. Anyway, Picard finally calls Wesley back and explains things over sandwiches. He tells of how, when he was just graduated, he and his friends were waiting at some outpost to go on to their assignments. While there, he got into a fight with a trio of surly Gnosticans and wound up getting stabbed through the back. That's why he needed an artificial heart. The odd thing he noted was that he looked down at the blade in his chest and laughed, but he doesn't know why. He also discusses romance with Wesley and the importance of being careful with relationships. Wesley, of course, asserts that he has total control when it comes to women. Please. Every time Troy bends over, he has to go and change his pants. Back on Enterprise, they work to try to find a way to force the Packlids to contact them, or to find a way to get a beam through their shields. Over on the Packlid ship, Geordi's forced to program their replicators to make more phasers. This doesn't turn out well for Geordi, though, as, when contact finally is restored, Packlids set phaser on ass-kick and blast them again. The Packlids then demand all the information from their computer in exchange for Geordi. This calls for a trip to the conference room, where Worf's position is clearly stated. We must use force. We must hit their ship until their shields drop, then beam Geordi back. Then we go over and tear the Packlids' faces off, and then we put them back on upside down, and then we... Meanwhile, Wesley and Picard arrive at the starbase, and Picard is brought in for the surgery. Everyone's wearing nice, relaxing, bright red outfits, because nothing is as relaxing as crimson. I also like the way they all look like they work at the main reactor of the Willy Wonka factory. The main surgeon puts Picard's mind at ease on how easy this procedure will be, and then puts him under so he can give a little speech to everyone gathered about how this is an incredible procedure that he's going to perform. And with the speech out of the way, the doctor gets to work removing Picard's appendix. Now, I only took a semester of human anatomy in college and never actually dissected anything larger than a cat. But I could swear that the heart was located somewhere in the chest. You know, up where that thing is that's covering Picard, instead of down below it where the doctor's messing about. Poor Picard. He's going to come out of this thing with the same bad heart and a vasectomy. Well, at least we still know there are HMOs in the future. Back on Enterprise, they reveal that the Packlids' entire development has been one of stealing technology from others, including the Romulans and the Klingons, neither of which seems terribly likely. Riker says they're going to have to trick the Packlids, which should be really hard considering they're not there in person to use the got-your-nose trick on them or tell them their shoes are untied. But Geordi's thinking the same thing, so he convinces them to let him talk to the Enterprise.
We want what we want.
Ah, how very zen. So Riker gives Geordi the info in plain view, showing that any assertions the Packlids are not as dumb as they seem are unfounded. These could not be more obvious unless they actually used huge signs for Geordi. He quickly catches on to the plan and follows along until the Packlids figure that he can make them weapons. Meanwhile, Picard's surgery is not going well. For some reason, installing Picard's new artificial heart is causing problems. Again, no expert, but maybe if you put it in his chest instead of his leg, it might work better. You know, just spitballing here. Well, they need a super-duper specialist on this, and the only one in the area is the Gorgon. So, now we have a ticking clock to resolve this Packlid issue. My God. How do you explain to Starfleet Command you couldn't go to save your captain's life because your chief engineer has been kidnapped by Corky? Oh, and speaking of which, Riker decides to level the playing field by putting Ensign Gomez, previously known for not fixing the shields and dumping her drink on Picard in our last episode, in charge of Operation Rescue Geordi. Poor guy, he's so screwed. The clock races on, with Packlid needing some brains, Picard needing a new heart, and somewhere, a lion demanding courage. Geordi starts setting up the Packlid weapons, and Riker says he's going to fire on them. So Geordi and Gomez begin running through their routines while the countdown goes, until the Enterprise makes a great big red cloud with their engines. Geordi calls it the Crimson Shield, which turns off all weapons and will leave them helpless. The Packlids, being incredibly stupid, buy into this and reluctantly surrender Geordi rather than being destroyed. With this resolved, Enterprise is able to get Pulaski to Picard in time to save his life and apparently stabilize his leg heart. When he returns, the crew applauds until he glares at them with total loathing, showing that warm fatherly charm we've so loved him for. You know, there's a real irony in the fact that a man who has a brand new heart has such a total hatred for the people close to him.